Last winter, I agreed to house sit for a family friend while they were in Florida. It was an easy job. I just had to feed the dog, bring in the mail, and make sure the pipes didn't freeze. They lived in one of those nice, quiet suburbs where nothing ever happens. The first 2 nights were fine, but on the third night, their golden retriever started acting weird. He kept staring at the basement door, whining and growling softly. I figured maybe he heard a raccoon or something. But around midnight, I heard it too. Footsteps. Slow, steady footsteps coming from below. I froze halfway down the stairs, listening. The sound stopped the second I turned the basement light on. I texted the homeowners. Hey, quick question. Is anyone supposed to be in the basement? And no reply for 30 minutes. Then I got one. It said, "Don't open the door." I stared at that message for a long time. Then another came through. "The lock's messed up down there. Leave it closed, please." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I called a locksmith and said the door was jammed. When he forced it open, the smell hit us first. Old mildew, something metallic underneath. The floor was covered in dust, except for a line of fresh footprints leading up the stairs. When I told the homeowners, they swore nobody had been in that basement for literally years. Then they mentioned something I wish they hadn't. They used to rent it out to a long-term tenant who just disappeared one day. They'd never replaced the lock after he left. Two summers ago, my car broke down on this empty stretch of Route 39 in Kansas. Middle of nowhere. No gas stations, no cell service. Not even a light on the horizon. It was July, still hot even after the sun went down. I sat there for a while, hoping someone would drive by, but after a half an hour of nothing but crickets, I decided to walk. After maybe 20 minutes, I saw a faint light ahead. Porch light flickering just a little. It felt like a miracle. By the time I got there, the sky had gone completely dark. The house was an old white farmhouse, paint peeling, one of those wraparound porches that looked like it used to be beautiful. I knocked, and after a few seconds, a man in his 40s opened the door. Clean jeans, tucked in shirt, polite smile. He said, "Evening, son. Are you okay?" I told him about my car, and he nodded and said his phone still worked. Then he called for his wife. She came to the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel, smiling in the way polite strangers do when they're being overly nice. "Poor thing," she said. Come in, come in." The second I stepped inside, I noticed how clean everything was. Not cozy clean, sterile. The air smelled like bleach and lemon. Not a speck of dust anywhere. The man picked up an old corded phone on the wall. He frowned, tapped the receiver a few times, then told me it might take a second to get a line out. I said okay and thanked him. The woman asked if I wanted something to drink, and before I could answer, she said, "Coffee's already on." I sat at their kitchen table, polished wood and spotless, while she poured me a mug. I noticed all the framed pictures along the walls. Family portraits, birthday photos, Christmas mornings. But in every single one, the same couple stood smiling, and the kid with them had his face completely scratched out, like someone had dragged a nail through the glass. I tried not to stare. The man hung up on the phone and said, "The sheriff's on his way, shouldn't be long." That threw me off, because I hadn't given him my name or told him where my car was. I asked, "You told him about my car?" He smiled. "Oh, he knows the stretch well." Then he sat down across from me, hands folded, just watching me. The woman stood behind him, still smiling and not saying a word. That's when I noticed the back door, the one near the kitchen. It had a big padlock on it. But the weird part was the lock was on the inside. Something about that made my stomach drop. I mumbled something about maybe going back to check on my car. Said I'd meet the sheriff there. The woman's smile finally faded and her voice got quiet. "You shouldn't go back out there now." The man stood up too. He said, "Yeah, it's not safe in the dark." I forced a laugh and said I'd be fine, that I had a flashlight in my car. They just stood there watching me, no goodbye and no offer to help. I walked out, half expecting them to follow. When I turned back, the porch light flickered off. The house went completely black. I started running. About 10 minutes later, a pickup truck came from the opposite direction. I waved it down and told the driver what happened. He looked spooked, but he let me ride back into town. The next morning, a deputy gave me a ride back out to get my car. It started right up, no problem. Told him about the house, the couple, the phone call. He stared at me for a long time before saying, "My son, that stretch of 39 hasn't had a livable house on it for years." Drove out of there anyway. The spot was still there, overgrown yard, half collapsed porch, door hanging open. But inside, there was no furniture, no coffee pot, and no smell of bleach. Just dust and cobwebs. Deputy kicked at something on the floor and bent down. It was a photo frame, the same couple, still smiling. Only this time, the kid's face hadn't been scratched out. It was my face. I'm a substitute teacher, not the kind that just shows movies and naps either. I actually like the job. Most of the schools around here know me pretty well, so when someone calls out sick last minute, I'm the first person they ring. Last March, I was covering a sophomore history class. It was a normal Wednesday, cold outside, and the kids were restless because spring break was close. Around 10:40 a.m., the bell had just rung for a second period when the intercom crackled to life. "Attention staff, lockdown. Locks, lights, out of sight. This is not a drill." The voice was calm, but it hit like a punch. I'd done a few drills before. Everyone knows the routine, but something in the tone made my stomach twist. I told the kids to move fast. Lights off, door locked, everyone behind the big shelf on the far wall. They were whispering, trying not to laugh, but I could see the fear starting to sink in. About 2 minutes in, we heard it. Footsteps in the hall. Not the kind of walk someone makes when they're supposed to be there. Then came knocking. 3 short knocks. Then pause. Then again, with the exact same rhythm. With the girl's mouth, "Is it the office?" I shook my head. The office never knocks. They always use the intercom. A voice followed, soft and low. "It's the office. You can open up now." I swear every kid in the room held their breath. I didn't answer. The handle jiggled once, then again, harder. I put my finger to my lips, crouched lower and motioned for the nearest kid to move away from the door. After maybe 10 seconds, the footsteps went on, down the hall and past the next door. We sat there in the dark for what felt like an hour, though it was probably closer to 40 minutes. I could hear some of the kids crying quietly. My phone buzzed non-stop with notifications, but I didn't dare check it. Finally, we heard police shouting, "Clear, clear!" and someone pounded on our door, identifying themselves as law enforcement. When they escorted us out, the hallways looked normal, which somehow made it worse. Just backpacks, papers, and this weird silence. I overheard a few words from one of the officers talking into his radio. saying, "We've got him." Later that day, the principal told staff what happened. A man had entered the building wearing a janitor's uniform. Said he was there for maintenance. Nobody questioned it at first because we'd had contractors in the week before fixing ceiling tiles. He'd apparently been wandering around for almost an hour before anyone realized he didn't belong there. A lockdown was triggered when a teacher saw him carrying a duffel bag, acting strange near the gym. When the police searched him, they found a handgun and several rounds in the bag. I don't want to think about what he planned to do. Here's what gets me though. He tried our door. If I'd opened it, if I'd said anything, one of the kids had secretly texted their dad during the lockdown. Called the local police directly, which sped up their response. That text might have saved us all. It's been almost a year and I still can't stand hearing the word lockdown. Every time the intercom clicks on, even for morning announcements, my pulse jumps. I don't know who that man was or what he wanted, but when they escorted him out, one of the officers told me quietly, "We kept them safe today." And I think about that way too often, not just because of what happened, but because of what almost did. I was driving cross country last summer for work. One of those weeks when I just wanted to get home but couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. It was close to 1 a.m. when I finally gave up and pulled into this little roadside motel in Nevada. One floor, maybe 20 rooms, flickering neon sign that said vacancy. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a beat-up pickup parked at the far end. The office door was propped open, moths bouncing around the light. Inside, an older guy was half watching a tiny TV behind the counter. He looked surprised to see anyone. He handed me a key, an actual metal key, and said, "You're the only one tonight, room 12, end of the row." The room smelled like detergent and old carpet. It was nothing fancy. One bed, TV bolted to the dresser, bathroom door that didn't quite close. I remember thinking how quiet it was. No cars, no highway noise, just desert air. I fell asleep fast. Sometime around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a sound. Not knocking, but tapping. Light and rhythmic with the door. At first I thought maybe the wind was rattling something. Then a man's voice said, calm and polite, "Front desk, you left your headlights on." It took me a second to process it. My car was right outside the window. I could see the headlights clearly off. "Front desk," he said again in the same tone. "Sir, open up please." Something about the voice made my skin crawl. It was too steady, too rehearsed. I looked through the peephole. It was dark, completely black. Someone had a finger pressed against the glass. I backed up so fast I hit the wall. He knocked again, harder this time. "Sir, I need you to open the door." Every instinct told me not to say a word. After maybe a full minute, the knocking stopped. Silence. I stood there listening for footsteps, but I didn't hear any, just the hum of the air conditioner. I grabbed my wallet, keys, and shoes and decided I was leaving right then. The bathroom window was small, but it opened. I climbed through it, scraped my arm, and landed behind the building. When I got around to the parking lot, I didn't see anyone. The office light was off now, and that neon vacancy sign was buzzing faintly. As I pulled out, I looked toward the road sign, and there was a man standing under it, not moving, just watching my car go by. It wasn't the clerk. This guy was younger, tall, and wearing a baseball cap. I drove until I hit the next town before stopping. Called the motel to complain, but nobody answered. The next morning, I looked it up online. Google showed the motel had 3 reviews. The most recent one, posted about 2 months earlier, said, "Do not stay here. There's a man who knocks at night. He says he's staff, but he isn't." That review had 1 like and no replies. When I checked again a week later, the listing for the motel was gone completely. I still drive that route sometimes, and there's just an empty lot now, sign torn down and dust blowing over a cracked foundation. But once, just once, when I passed at night, I thought I saw someone standing there again, right where the sign used to be, motionless in the dark. So this happened a few years ago when I was in Seattle. I just started a new job and was renting a small studio apartment downtown. The building was old, with creaky floors and paint that never really dried right. But it was cheap and I didn't know anyone else in the city, so I didn't really mind. Across the hall from me lived this older guy everyone called Mr. Levin. He looked like someone's grandpa, always wore a button of a shirt, tucked into slacks, sometimes even a hat when he went out. He kept to himself, but he was friendly in his quiet, polite way. He's the kind of person who says good morning even if you barely make eye contact. After a few weeks, he started leaving little things at my door. A muffin, a plastic container of soup, sometimes a newspaper with a post-it that said, "Thought you might like this." I asked him about it once and he just smiled and said he hated wasting food. He told me he used to work at a bakery nearby and they'd give him extras at the end of the day. It was nice, honestly. It made the place feel a little less lonely. Anyway, one night I got home from work around midnight, and as I walked down the hall, I noticed his door was open. Just a crack, not wide open, but enough to see it wasn't latched. His lights were off, and it was dead quiet. I hesitated because it felt wrong to just ignore it, but also wrong to step into someone's apartment. I knocked lightly, but there was no answer. Waited and then knocked again, calling out, "Mr. Levin, are you okay?" Still nothing. I don't know why, but I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. It was dark except for the hallway light spilling in. Everything looked too neat. Bed was made tight, shoes lined up perfectly by the wall, the table wiped spotless. It didn't look lived in. It looked staged almost. I took a step in and that's when I saw it. The table by the window was covered in envelopes, maybe a dozen. Each one had a name written on it in this really neat, careful cursive. And the one on top had my name. I didn't open it. I just froze there staring at it until I realized how weird this was. Like, why would he have that? I slowly backed out, closed the door, and went straight into my apartment. I locked the door, sat on the floor, and told myself I'd deal with it in the morning. The next day, I went downstairs to talk to the landlord. I told her I was worried about Mr. Levin, that his door was open and things seemed off. She gave me this look like she didn't understand what I was talking about. Then she said, "Sweetheart, that apartment's been empty since December. Mr. Levin passed away before Christmas." I just kinda stood there, trying to process it. I told her that wasn't possible, that I talked to him, that he'd been leaving food by my door for weeks. She shook her head and said his daughter had come to clear the place out weeks ago. Nobody had lived there since. I went back upstairs in this weird daze. When I got to my floor, his door was closed and locked. No light underneath. It was like it had always been that way. That night, I was lying in bed trying to convince myself I'd mixed things up somehow. But there was another tenant who looked like him. Maybe the landlord had the wrong name. But around midnight, I heard something slide under my door. The sound was so quiet, it barely woke me up. When I got up to check, there was an envelope lying on the floor. No name on it this time. I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with one line written in that same perfect handwriting. You should move out. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning I called off work, packed a few bags, and stayed at a hotel. I was out of that building by the end of the week. A few months later, I was scrolling local news and saw an article about that same building. There had been a fire in one of the upper units, apparently some wiring issue that spread fast. The article said the remains they found inside were identified as an elderly man named Levin. They estimated he'd been dead in that unit for about 2 weeks before the fire started. That was the same month I moved in, the same time I started finding pastries at my door. If you've made it this far, I would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe, as it helps this channel grow. But until next time, see you.